This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information that will expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers. Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering. I am AJ Murray at No Blinky Blinky, and I am so excited to be recording our second ever episode live in person from our Airbnb here in Asheville. And it's the first episode we're all in the same room. Yesterday we recorded, we were without Tim. He was still making his way down here. But I'm so happy. This is an unbelievable moment in the history of this podcast, a very long time coming. So why don't we start with Tim? How are you doing, buddy? At Tim Bertino.
Well, I'm much better now.
Yeah.
Should I give a recap?
Yeah, please.
So I've had a little bit of extra time on my hands the last 48 hours.
So you wrote a bunch of intros, is what I'm hearing.
I didn't do any of that. I didn't do anything productive. Didn't do anything productive. I got stuck in New York. So I did some reading. I did some other stuff like that. But luckily, AJ and Dan came to pick me up because I wasn't even able to fly into Asheville. I got a couple hours away and they spent a long day. Really appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. I would have been super bummed if I had to turn around and go home.
Yeah.
I think that's mutual. I think we all would have been bummed if you had to go.
Yeah.
I was
Definitely.
bummed because you were kind of almost calling it, you know?
Oh, I'm glad it wasn't celebration. I was like, he
Yeah.
darn, he didn't
Tim's
make
not-
it. So close.
Yeah, you should have seen us all just sitting there on our phones like, okay, we got to find a flight for him. Let's see. Well, Delta, we're
That was so
American
cool.
Airlines.
I mean, you all were helping. My wife was helping. And ultimately, I got here late, but got here.
Better late than never.
So thank you.
Thanks for coming, man. At Andy Laptef, permitipandy.com. Andy, I love seeing your smile in person. It's
He's
so
sitting
much-
next to me.
I'm so happy Tim's here.
And your hair looks even better when it's like, 3 feet away from my head. I can see every little individual hair.
We're
It's
going to
just-
do a little class here in a little bit. He's going to teach me. I don't have enough hair to do it, I don't think, but
What do you put in that thing?
in that thing.
looks like a helmet.
Yeah. Do you put your helmet on in the morning? Like,
So AJ, I'm good. it's been a great trip. Tim camped out in front of my bedroom door last
Oh
night.
my God, that's
and had a
hilarious.
beer.
That's hilarious.
so creepy.
So if for those of you listening, if you hadn't seen it, go back to our Twitter timeline. You will see a picture of Tim selfieing in front of Andy's door. He's like, behind this door is a sleeping Andy.
Everybody thought that was heartfelt, and Lexi just said it was creepy. But hey,
with our
You're
A1
like,
account.
you're in like this weird lighting with like, your shadows like behind you on Andy's
Lexi, that's just
door,
my
like,
face.
Very ominous. You look stoked to be there though. So
I was.
for what
So
it's
it's super exciting. I'm so glad Tim made it. Asheville is incredible. We had the Chris Denny tour, which was great.
Oh, yeah.
We had some coffee with some friends this
Oh my
morning,
God,
which is
that
so
was so
nice,
incredible.
right? That felt really nice to like meet some
Yeah,
people
meet some
who've come
fans.
here for the first time. I felt
Yeah.
like I had to get that out of my system just to kind of like shake the
Yeah.
heebie-jeebies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been sitting by the fire pit. We've had some barbecue. It's just been a great, it's been a great time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And over to Dan at Howdy Packet.
Howdy.
How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing wonderful. I've had a latte. No. We changed it. No, it was a latte. Yes, I had
he's
a latte.
jittery as hell right now.
He's going to be talkative just like drunk Dan. Shut up.
Coffee does the same thing to me. No? And some bagels at the Ultra Coffee
Yeah,
Bar.
Ultra
Is that what
Coffee,
it's
yeah.
called? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ultra
yeah.
Coffee.
And got to meet some of the community, and that was really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad we did that because I think it would have been more of a shock factor if we waited right till the actual event. Just like how all these people are here. So I was glad to kind of get that out of the way.
And last but not least, Lexi at Track a Pacer.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm just really excited that we're all here in
I
one room.
know.
It's a little it's
Recording
weirder.
will never be the same again.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
weirder today than it was yesterday.
Is that the
Tim's
Tim
here.
Why is
factor?
everybody
I think it
looking at
might
me?
be.
What the hell?
I think it might be. Yeah, I'm like feeling the butterflies. I don't usually feel
Yeah.
butterflies for podcasts, but
Right,
yeah, I'm excited. This has been a great trip so far.
Well, I am very excited because this episode is sponsored by Open Gear, a digi company. If you're thinking about an out-of-band solution, please consider Open Gear and reach out to them today. You can go to opengear.com and check out their offerings. And we'll make sure we'll get you in touch with some wonderful people over there. And speaking of wonderful people at Open Gear, I am very excited to introduce Ramtin. He's a solutions architect at Open Gear, and welcome to the show. And because I want to shake your hand.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here.
So Rontine, what we want to do is talk to you about your career. And from what I understand, you've been in Open Gear for a long time.
No, just a little bit.
So why don't we start there? When did you join? Well, first, let's start at what do you do at Open Gear today?
Sure. Now, currently, I'm a solutions architect. So I do a little bit of everything when it comes to helping customers succeed in their deployments.
Okay.
That can be, initial troubleshooting of a deployment, recommendations, designs, actually fully deploying a prod environment for them. Whatever they need, I'm just there for a pre and post sales.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Soup to nuts, A to Z. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. And so when did you join Open Gear and what was your first position there?
I joined Open Gear August of 2011.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost hitting 11 years here soon.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. So my first position was a manufacturing technician. So I basically assembled the product, kind of put everything together, was able to test it. Back then we only had about 2 people doing manufacturing.
Wow.
So we were in charge of shipping, receiving, building, testing,
Wow.
troubleshooting.
Wow.
Was this like in your basement?
No.
It was a basement.
Hey, basement. Okay.
It was like an upstairs of a building with enough room for literally 3 people.
Wow.
to kind of walk around.
Jeez.
So starting
Dude,
from
that is so cool.
Yeah.
you
So,
started
like-
from the ground and now you're like a solutions architect. Like you know the products. It
Yeah.
sounds like inside
So
and out.
when
Then.
you
Yeah,
say
like
you know the
literally.
product, you really
You
know the
really,
product.
you really
Right.
built the product.
It's part of the journey, right? That's
Yeah.
all it's all about.
Yeah.
So
Hashtag ITAJJJ.
IAATJ.
Oh my God.
It's all about the journey.
I messed that one up. Sorry.
I think that really speaks to the culture of the company, right? Where
Oh,
you
yeah.
really promote from within and people that are really willing to put their time and effort in really get rewarded. That's really cool to see.
Oh, absolutely. I think that option is there in a lot of places. And I actually am still really good friends with a lot of the guys in the manufacturing floors. And most of the folks that were there when I started are still there, which is really awesome.
oh, wow.
So
That's
it's not,
awesome.
I
Wow.
hope it's a bigger room now.
It's like,
Well, they're fitting 6 people in
Yeah.
there. 3.
but and this, not just in the manufacturing, like in the accounting, in support, in all different aspects. Almost everybody sticks around once they join the company, which tells you a lot about the company
Yeah.
itself.
Oh, yeah.
I think it speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So how many when you started like company wide, how many people were there roughly?
Company wide, I don't know the exact number, but I know that I was employee number 7 and I was replacing employee number 6 in the US.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So we're looking at 7 people in the US. And I want to say there were about 10, 15 engineers at the time in
Wow.
Australia. Brisbane, Australia is kind of where our engineering headquarters was.
So how did
Okay.
you find Open Gear?
I found Open Gear through school. So I had, they had applied for I was actually getting my CNA at the time and I ended up not getting it because I got so busy with school and finding this job. But I had applied originally for Open Gear back in March through the tech school that I was attending. And due to different circumstances, I ended up not taking the position. And I moved to, being a installer, satellite dish network installer.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did that for a little while. And about 6 months later, I had decided that it's time to kind of get into something with tech, even if you have to get on the ground level. I kind of wanted to just be there for a new company and learn and grow with it. So I had applied and it was perfect timing because the other person that was in the manufacturing floor had decided to move on. So, I fortunately got in at the perfect time before the job posting had even gone up. So,
Oh, wow.
Nice.
it was-
Lucky. Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you had gone through the process previously, did that kind of keep your name on the list there of like
Yep.
you coming back in.
Yeah, exactly. I try not to, burn any bridges or anything. So I just, I said, this is a fantastic offer, but right now I'm just going to go and do this other thing. And the manager basically had my name down. So when the time came for me to email him, I emailed him and I said, hey, do you still have anything open as you guys are growing? And he said, perfect timing. As a matter of fact, my coworker or my one of my employees is leaving, and I was about to post a job. So
nice.
Why don't you come in? And there was not even an interview at that point because I had already interviewed 6 months ago.
It was destiny.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it felt like. So
yeah.
So you found out about Open Gear through school. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So it was just basically your typical, tech school that I was attending, and looking for jobs. I had found the satellite installer job myself, but after that, I was just going to the school counselor, seeing what kind of job posting they had. And this is the one that they came up with. They said it's a networking company, but it's not really a networking position, but it might be a good way to get your foot in the door. And that's kind of why I decided to take the position. I applied, and history from there.
Nice.
Yeah. So now, do you have a degree?
I do. So I have my MBA that I got probably a year ago.
Okay.
So I went to school. So I got my associates in networking, although I never got my CNA.
Yeah.
I probably, I don't remember all the Cisco commands in it at this point, but
It's okay. Neither do I.
none of us do.
Yeah.
But after getting my associate, I moved on to just working full time and staying focused on that for a couple of years.
Okay.
Then I went and got my bachelor's in cybersecurity, and again took another couple of years break. And then when I got my MBA, so OpenGear's been kind enough to kind of help me grow. And as I grew into different positions, I felt the need that I need to kind of educate myself and grow with the company.
Okay.
So I would just kind of move on and go to different classes and schools just to make sure I keep up.
Was it difficult for you to balance all that
It was
time-wise?
Yeah. It's hard to kind of work, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, just depending on the position, kind of the hours changed. But yeah, it's hard to do that. And then right after that, go to school and spend, 3-4 hours and then spend time with the family afterwards. But
yeah.
Did you have a pretty good idea of what Open Gear was all about, out of band management, all that, when you got into the company?
Originally when I applied,
Yeah.
That's a great question. No, actually. So when I applied, I didn't even know what a console server was.
Oh,
Okay.
Even though I was going to school to be a network engineer, I had no idea what a console server was.
Ramtin, you got my attention when you said cable guy, right? So
Right.
for me, and I've told this
guy.
Well,
Dan.
I'm messing with
tell
you.
him it's the
It's the
same
same
thing,
family.
Ramtin.
Yeah,
Tell him
it's
it's the same
the
thing.
same
Yeah,
family.
thanks, man.
Don't agree with him.
So why I might have missed it, but what pushed you from, I'm installing satellites and I won something? Like for me, it was an injury. I got hurt in the field. And what was your transition? Did something happen, or you just wanted more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually loved what I was doing as a satellite installer, although in Utah, it can be difficult at times because you got to go clean off the snow off the roof before you can install the satellite dish. But I had actually put in my 2 weeks to go work at a different position, which was for the highway, doing all of their lights and all the street lights for the Utah highway. But what turned out to be, the job posting was for a network technician / electrical engineer to come in and kind of set up the lights, set up the toll logos, do all that stuff. But when I got there, the job was not as described. So basically they said, 5% of your job is doing electrical engineering, and then 95% of it is just construction. So get your hard hat on.
Yeah.
And I
feel like that should have been a little more than fine print.
Yeah.
In the description.
slightly.
Where's the
So-
network part?
Yeah, that's not how the interview was. The interview was like in this little office, and you had all these technical equipment, and they were talking about the LEDs, and the guy that I was replacing was there. And, within the first day, that same night, I emailed the folks at Open Gear, and I was like, hey, do you guys still have anything open?
So did you even start that job?
Oh yeah. I started it, but after like a day of construction work, I was like, well, not that there's anything wrong with construction, it just wasn't for me.
Right.
I just came home and I immediately applied for the other job, and I let my manager know that I'm gonna move on because I got a different job.
Good for you.
Very-
I mean, I think a lot of people would be tempted to like maybe stay for 6 months and just like see, I feel like that's maybe where I would tend towards with jobs, but it's great that you like knew what you wanted.
Yep.
And when it didn't seem like it was where, that job was going to be where you wanted to go, you just said, hey, this is not for me. And you moved on to where you needed to be. I mean, you set your own course. That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought AJ kept short jobs, but dang, one day. That's
that's
you
a
got him
record.
beat.
Record.
I feel great now.
I love Dan in real life. He's just slinging it.
Dan has been roasting everybody this entire trip.
and for anyone not watching, I'm guessing AJ did this strategically. Dan and Andy are on opposite ends of the room right now.
Strategic.
Yeah, I
is-
can't even see Andy unless he leans forward. There we go. Hey, there you go. buddy.
It's for the
Strategic
best.
is the word I would use for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So Ramtin, I want to talk to you about how did you make the leap, right? Like you're working in manufacturing, you're putting these things together, you're also responsible for shipping them. How did you make the jump into the next position?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm always a tinkerer when it comes to networking equipment, electrical equipment, things in that nature. I just love playing around with them, configuring them. So what would happen is a lot of the times we may have failures on the line, or we may have power issues. Something need to be soldered on or off. Configuration would need to change. So I would always be the one to raise my hand and say, hey, can I go off the line and kind of get these things fixed? So as I got more and more comfortable with it, I reached out to the support manager, who at the time it was just him and one other guy doing the support. And I said, hey, if you have any positions, I'd be really interested. I think I would be good at, helping customers because I can fix these things. I'm familiar with the CLI. I'm familiar with the UI, and I can help customers walk through and troubleshoot things. And in the, with my school, I had the background of networking and Windows and all the components that a typical out-of-band user may be using. So I brought that up, and about probably 6 months later, so 3 years into me working there, I got the job offer to be a support engineer at Open Gear.
I want to highlight that because I think a lot of people, when they're working somewhere and they see a position they want, they just like go, I want that. I really want that. And then they think to themselves, like, how do I get there? They might plot a course. They might get it. They might not. But you set your intentions. You made your intentions clear. You went to the hiring manager and you said, hey, I want to work on your team. Here's why I want to work on your team. And if there was any sort of gap in knowledge, like, let me know what I got to work on so I can get there. Like, you clearly stated your intentions, and 6 months later, you got it.
Absolutely.
Bam. Nailed it.
Yeah. So many successful people that we talk to really take control of their own career,
Right.
their own
Yeah.
destiny.
Yeah.
And
But it's awesome that, you work at a company that you have a crazy career path, right?
Yeah.
Like-
Oh yeah.
Like going from, putting the boards together and all that, and then becoming this, like the architect, like that's a good career path at what company?
Yeah.
Like I've been at my company for 10 years now, and it's like, that's what I hope I can get to,
Yep.
so
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just speaking out and letting your intentions known.
yeah.
And a lot of the time, again, I've been extremely fortunate that all the people that I've spoken with have been pretty open with what requirements there are, what you need to know to move on to the next position. And, I've always gone and learned it or gathered the information to make sure that I can meet those demands. With support, for example, I went and learned about LDAP and TACAX and Radius because that was one of the
You went out of
biggest
your
things.
way to learn things that you needed. You mentioned that earlier, right? Like whenever they needed something, you volunteered for it. You were proactive about that.
Yeah.
So.
Note to self: talk to boss, senior architect.
just got to plant that seed, Dave.
Yeah, I'm just start using that word, senior architect. Like, what'd you say? Nothing. What?
I sneezed. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. So, what was the next position? I don't want to just keep asking that question.
No,
So how many different positions have you held at Open Gear?
So after this one, I basically I was in support for roughly about 3.5 years, maybe 4 years.
Mhm.
And that's when our sales team, so Dan, my manager, reached out and said, "Hey, we're growing our strategic account."
Like Dan?
Yeah, like that.
that Dan. Hey Dan. Hi Dan.
They reached out and they said that they're growing their strategic accounts and they're looking for somebody who can kind of stay dedicated and focused on the customer's environments instead of being so widespread into everything, right? So you would have, only 4 or 5 accounts under your wings, but you would do anything from, again, support to deployment to recommendations to even, replicating some of the customers' environments to make sure that they're all working as expected before they do the upgrade and patching and things in that nature.
That's cool.
And that's kind of when I went from the support position into the sales engineer position. And then as the company grew and grew and grew, I kind of just became the solutions architect for all of America. So not just our strategic accounts, but I kind of handle anything that's technical, but it's not really support related, and anything that the customers need to kind of help with their deployment or understand the product better.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable too, that you came from the position that you did, because it's like, who better to ask a question about when you're putting stuff together, I see a lot of value in that.
So you went through a period where you were, in school, you're working jobs, you're trying to balance everything. One of the big proponents that we are for is mental health, right? We talk about that a lot on the show. So when you're carrying that much, how do you balance it all? And then what do you do to like unwind and relax? And
that's a great question. What's funny is unwinding to me has always been just doing something that I love and makes me happy. Well, I'm sure that's what it is for everybody. But when I was working and going to school, I was actually pretty happy because I was kind of furthering my education, and that was a rewarding thing for me. The biggest thing for me was when I get so drowned in work and at my own doing, because I love working so much that I end up realizing, I've been working for 10 hours. Maybe I should take a break. So when the pandemic hit, it kind of became pretty rough, because you're at home and you're just kind of working as much as you can until you're kind of like your wife says, hey, it's dinner time. So my unwinding became, getting passionate about cooking or getting into, brewing beers, which we're in Asheville. So
everyone at the table, their ears perked up.
I'm listening. Tell me more.
Yeah. And then, just playing video games and spending time with the family, just staying focused and trying to kind of close the laptop for a bit.
So you feel like you still had time to do that with your family, work, school, everything, like that was still there? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was there when I thought about it. So that's one thing that I realized, that you can get lost really fast if you don't focus, and you realize that you're getting burnt, you don't realize that you're getting burnt until you're burnt. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's good to kind of step out of the box. And, again, I know I keep saying this, but I'm fortunate enough to have really good managers, and Dan has been a big proponent of me taking time off and making sure that I'm focusing on my mental health and I'm not overworking myself, because, I'm sure he'll rather have me up and focused for, 8 to 10 hours a day rather than just being, a drag for 12 hours.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a message of like intentionally carving out time for like recovery, basically.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Just make sure that you're doing something that's kind of yours. Mm-hmm. Recently, I kind of just joined a workout group, right? I'm not good at going to the gym and dedicating myself, but I figured if I can join a group of people that are doing this, then I'm committing to them. And it's a great way to kind of just put work aside, go out, do something that's healthy, and spend time with other people. So.
That accountability is huge. I mean, we all experienced that in the beginning when we started this podcast. It came from a study group, and we all wanted to get that next certification. And once we started in the group, it's like, well, it's one thing when I make a decision personally that I'm not going to study tonight and I'd rather relax. But when now I have to answer to this guy and be like, well, I better read that chapter and prepare my presentation for next week, because like I don't want to let my friends down now. So that accountability is huge.
He's not somebody you want to disappoint either.
No. Not at all. I've learned, if anything I've learned about in-person Andy is I don't want to disappoint him. So I feel real bad for, making fun of him like I have this week. But I do it out of love. I really do.
He's the guy that says, I'm not mad at you, but I'm disappointed.
I'm not angry.
In your heart.
I'm not angry.
Dad.
I love that. I'm hurt.
But then I make fun of him again. And I feel better.
Hence the physical distance.
It's all,
Yes.
we're fine.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. So I think now is a good a time as any to start to change gears a little bit. So
I see what you did there.
yeah. See.
Uh,
So let's talk about out of band management.
Sure.
We have had an open gear episode before, but there's a lot of people that join us at various parts in our journey. So why don't we briefly go over what is out of band management?
Yeah, absolutely. So out of band is just basically getting, it's your terminal server, console server. It's a way for you to connect to your remote devices, to your networking equipment when your in-band connection is down, right? So when your network is down, when the switch is down, it's not responding, you need an alternate path. And OpenGear kind of draws that for you, whether that's through a second network connection, whether it's through cellular, whether it's through, some cloud hosted centralized manager. It gives you that alternate path so you can get to your equipment.
Yeah, let me give a little story that happened not too long. I told AJ about this earlier, but so we had a situation where we didn't have out of band management, right? And so there's switch A and switch B, and the way that they're both connected to each other through a port channel, and the way we were coming in to switch B was through switch A, through that port channel. That port channel got shut down on switch B by doing a shut. But we shut down the port channel that we were connected to. And then guess what? We had to make a little trip to the data center.
That's called cutting your arm off.
Yeah.
Or sawing off the branch or standing on
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a visual. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where out of band would have really saved our bacon.
So do you have out of band now?
Not yet.
Ramtin, I think I found your next.
There you go. Yeah.
I am working on that. So and OpenGear is who I'm going after. So.
Nice.
I've always experienced out of band as like my lifeline. You know what I mean? Like even with code upgrades, I'm managing a data center. And when I reboot that box, if you don't have out of band, you're just sitting there with that ping waiting to come up again. But when you have out of band, you can see each console message. You can see what's happening. Oh, hell, I'm in Ramon. Like you wouldn't know that.
Right.
It's nerve wracking without it.
Otherwise. And even in other deployments, like we've had a lot of data centers where we want to like bring up and I have to just configure a router, ship it, and then pray.
Oh my God.
I hope when they plug this circuit in, it comes up. And then if it doesn't, you got, like you said, send a tech out. So it's always been a lifeline for me out of band.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is there's so many different use cases when it comes to out of band, and you can have we're kind of there for you for your first day when you're doing the installation, where you're doing the configuration, but we're also there for your worst day when things are just completely down and you need access. But what's really interesting is a lot of our customers, a lot of our strategic customers actually don't touch the network during maintenance window if they don't have out of band running.
Yep.
So the very first step in their instructions is verify that you can get to the console port through OpenGear before actually moving on to the next step. And that way they're never down. Because even if they do go down, they can immediately get through console and bring it back up.
Very smart.
I'm not going to name names, but there's a hyperscaler not too long ago that brought everything down. And apparently their out of band wasn't as out of band as they thought it was. And they had to drive to data centers and get in. So, I mean, I was just amazed that a company of that scale didn't have out of band configured correctly. If they did, they would have got up a lot quicker, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because I think there were some replication issues and there was no way to get into those switches. And again, the console port is like your one true connection, regardless of the state of the product.
Yep.
We kind of provide that.
So there's lots of different out of band solutions out of there. There's plenty of different console server manufacturers. What is the OpenGear difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of companies out there, but there's not a lot that are the trendsetters, right? So we kind of did the cellular out of band. We kind of embedded that product in. It's all built in. It's your smart out of band. We have a lot of built-in smart features in the product that offer more than just a console server. And those can vary greatly depending on your use case, which is kind of why I love my job is one day I can go in and, a customer just wants out of band with a cellular IP that they can connect to and jump into the console ports. So that's like day one. And another customer wants full on automation. And we offer that as well through our centralized management. You can literally configure a switch. I won't name names, but you can configure a full-on switch router all through our automation system if you're starting your automation journey, right? As I've been listening to you guys' podcasts, I know that a lot of network engineers are kind of at the beginning of starting the journey, but that some of them are not fully there. And we're kind of there to help you with that, and we're kind of there to be a part of it. So we can have cases, and this is I think what one of the biggest differences is if you are fully automated, we're there to kind of be that transport layer to just get you from A to B. If you're at the beginning of your journey, we're there to help you with setups. We can give you Python examples, we can give you Ansible examples. And if you're kind of in the middle, you can utilize our examples and our centralized manager to run those Ansible playbooks. So it's kind of like we have a little bit for whatever path or how far down the journey you are, which I think is a huge difference.
And you meet the customer where they are, which is pretty awesome and unique, because I feel like a lot of big vendors are like, well, here's the thing, and here's all the iron you need, and here's the software you need, and here's the licenses. And if you don't do any of this, you can't use it. It's not going to work. But you meet them where they are, and you have customized solutions, which is really like awesome, but very customer focused, right? Like centric.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's that again, it's the culture of the company. It's not the come buy this product and goodbye kind of thing, right? So we have dedicated sales engineers. We have like people like me who kind of help with POCs and things that may not already be in the software. And you're kind of just, if you want hand holding, we can hold your hand throughout the whole feature, throughout the whole installation. Or if you're kind of familiar with the product and just want to run with it yourself, you're more than welcome to as well.
Can I just say that as someone, I can't probably lean on this for too much longer, but as someone fairly new, everyone's laughing at me, as someone fairly new to networking who hasn't really thought about out of band that much, I have to say that like finding out you can use like, a cellular network for that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
So
I want to unpack
awesome.
that too, because I think one thing that's getting to be really cumbersome if you're doing it manually is new site, new equipment turn up. And with most companies trying to do more with less, there's less people. It takes a lot of time to ship equipment to a central site to configure manually and then ship out. So how can Open Gear help with new site, new configuration turn up without having to get equipment shipped to a central site, configure it first, and then ship it to the ultimate destination?
Great question. So we actually have 100 different ways that we can help with that.
Let's start with one.
Yeah.
You can't give me that many options. I'll never get anything done.
So I'll start with saying that we actually recently have one of our customers who's kind of deploying this whole zero trust network environment, and they don't want to any longer ship units to a centralized location and minimally configure them because that breaks the whole zero trust circle, right? So they want to just ship completely factory defaulted boxes to a site, rack it up, and then have it configured. But that usually requires somebody on site doing the configuration, which costs a lot of money. So with this particular customer, what we're doing is we're setting up their console server. Their console server reaches out to the centralized manager and gets itself configured using the cellular network. So all they have to do is just run 2 commands to be able to connect to the centralized manager. And at that point, everything else is still fully unconfigured default state. Once they're at the state, we can literally push full-on configurations and stand up a DHCP server that can ZTP the rest of the environment without you having to worry about anything, right? So we have some we have sampling Ansible playbooks. I've been kind of working with the customer to make sure that they get deployed correctly. And once the DHCP server is local, you don't have to worry about pushing that configuration or firmware file down 100 different times if you have 100 different switches. So we can host all of those files, all those configurations. That's for your automation heavy users. And if you have, a network engineer that's just beginning the journey, you just plug everything into the console port, and then they can jump in through the cellular or centralized manager and just manually configure things. Either way, it gets the job done. It's just a matter of how much work you want to put ahead of time and how much automation you want.
So let's go back to the basics there. How do you tie that device to the customer's instance of their central management? Is it through a serial number? Is it some sort of ID on the Open Gear box? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently our centralized manager is hosted by the customer, and that can be hosted somewhere in the cloud or in a virtualized environment locally. So we're actually tying it by basically telling the console server to go and dial that IP address with a certain set of credentials. And once they dial out, the centralized manager will have all the configuration ready. So it will push all the configuration through. It will, enable a DHCP server if you want, enable a TFTP server if you want. So it's not just the console server at this point, right? We're your ZTP, we're your file hosting, we're your console server, we're your, everything that I need your out-of-band essentially.
It's a toolbox.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And our newer platform supports things like Python and Docker. So if you really want to get fancy with it, you can deploy your own Docker container. Or again, we can provide samples or POC, any kind of Docker container that you want. Because we have some customers that, want to do an Nmap of their entire environment behind the Open Gear to see who's up, who's down, who's awake.
Wait, you're running Docker containers on the Open Gear device?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Show off.
It's we kind of as the company was growing, and since I've been there for a little while, we kind of grew not out of, but alongside of just being a terminal server and a console server. We kind of saw this journey of users and network engineers needing more than just terminal access, right? They wanted to make their everyday life easier. And what better device to put in a lot of your toolbox and tool sets than the device that's your in-band and out-of-band connection. So we're kind of your failure point. When everything else fails, we're still there, right? So we're there through cellular or second in-band connection. And because of that, we have that proximity. And when we have that proximity, why not put all your tools in the one thing that you can get to when everything else goes down? So,
okay, but can it run Minecraft?
Funny you should say that. That is the first thing I installed was a Docker container with a Minecraft server.
Yes,
I installed a TACX one and I installed a Counter-Strike one.
Nice.
Servers. Yeah, just to kind of like see if it's possible. I never connected to it because there's not a lot of GPU processing, so I'm not sure how that would handle it. But I'm sure it can do it to some aspect. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So one of the things that you picked up on, and we've had this conversation with Open Gear before, and I just want to highlight this, like, you guys really care about the network engineer, and you look to your customers, the network engineers, for feedback on the product. And when they come to you and say, I like this, but it could be really cool if you had this feature, or maybe we could just, add this tool set and make it compatible. And you guys go straight to the bench and figure out how you can get that in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one really cool thing is because now we have on a newer platform, we have, things like Python and Docker. We do that in the software. So you can, customers come in and say, oh, well, I'm looking for this feature. We're implementing this new automation, or we're implementing this new product, and currently your product doesn't support it, right? Or it's not compatible. What we usually do is we'll kind of solution engineer, solution architect around it and provide like a Docker container as a short-term solution, just to make sure that the customer gets going. And then we'll kind of hand that over to our engineering team, who can eventually deploy that proper in firmware. A good example of that is our new product initially didn't support a TFTP server, right? And again, having your TFTP files and having a TFTP server local to the all your switches and routers is pretty handy, especially inside an out-of-band box. So what we had done is we initially just wrote a quick Docker container, or pulled down an Alpine container and installed TFTPD on it. And that resolved the customer immediately. And about 3 to 4 months later, we actually had a proper TFTP server in the product as well.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
How do you keep that direct line with your customers for research and development? Do you have specific high profile customers that you really keep, I'm sure you keep a good relationship with all customers,
Mhm.
but how do you really get to the point of knowing both where the industry is going and what your customers really want?
Yeah, great point. So that a lot of that is our marketing and product management team kind of doing research, seeing where the industry is going, looking at articles, things like Garnet, just to see where the information or where the path is for network engineers, because we want to make sure that, we're the network engineer's best friend. We want to be there for them, whatever the case, whether it's the initial installation, as I mentioned, or whether it's your worst day. And on top of that, we have regular cadence call with a lot of our high profile customers, and we see it as a partnership, right? So this is a growing environment. Even with our strategic accounts, they're still growing. They're still deploying new features, new products, and we want to be there as a partner to kind of help them grow. And if we can offer a solution to make their life easier, then it's a win-win for both of us.
Y'all seem to be doing it well, because I've seen a lot of major vendors recently, especially with the automation aspect of things. I've seen some new products sort of come out, and the message is sort of like, yeah, I can do all this stuff. And then when you dig a little deeper, they'll be like, well, it can almost do that stuff. Like, we're so close to getting that, and fixed in the next release kind of thing. But y'all seem to be listening pretty well.
Yeah, we try to. A really fun example was recently we had a customer deploying Palo Alto firewalls, and they want to be able to
Dan perked up a little bit. He's got Palo.
You're speaking to Dan right now.
Continue.
So they want to be able to configure these boxes remotely, and especially in cases of RMAs, right? So Palo Alto has its own centralized manager that can fully configure your firewall. But how do you get the firewall to talk to the centralized manager if it's a brand new firewall that's been RMA'd? So I work with the customer and set up a POC where they can literally plug in their Palo Alto through the console port. And this is all automation through console as well. So not only doing ZTP, but we thank you to NetMiko and Kirk Byers and all the folks that kind of do all the automations over Python. But we were able to do a super simple Python script that when you plug in your brand new Palo Alto to the OpenGear, it's able to recognize the port label as like a default Palo Alto name, because it's not going to have a host name, and kick off a API call to your centralized server and say, hey, on OpenGear port 8, we have a brand new Palo Alto in there. Could you go and configure it? And then your automation server would kick off the Python script that would go and do the initial configuration on the Palo Alto and have it reach out to its centralized manager to get the rest of the config. So
that's super cool.
Yeah.
So what I'm also hearing from that too is it can, like, let's say if we're trying to ship out sites, right? And if you have your OpenGear box configured to where that when this equipment is deployed, that router is going to be on port 1, switch is going to be on port 2, all that stuff. But like, let's say kind of your example earlier about you don't want to have it shipped to your HQ, configure it, send it out there. You just want the equipment shipped out to wherever it's going. But if you have your automation set up to like what you're just saying, all you have to do is plug it in, then it can put the config on there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have some customers that do full-on configurations over the console port because, again, with NetMiko, we're just the transport, right? A lot of the network engineers have already written the code to do the configuration.
That's
they just
so cool.
need it to get there. And on top of that, we have things to make things a little bit easier. So once you have a configured switch or router and you're deploying a product or you're deploying an OpenGear afterwards, then we have things like auto discovery or auto port discovery that can go in and fetch all the port labels. That way you don't have to figure out what's on port 1, or you don't have to necessarily ensure with the on-site engineer or on-site technician that they connected the right switch to the right serial port.
Because sometimes even like in our case, like we have remote techs, but sometimes it's actually like the receptionist.
Yep.
Whoever that may be, they might be like, okay, we need you to plug this cable into port 1 or unplug the power cable, and they're like, is that port 8? And it's like, no, that's not port 8. That's the black cable that comes out of the back, but they just don't know. That's not their world, right? And so you're saying that it actually, you can make it to where it doesn't even matter what port you plug it in. It can figure out
Correct. Yeah, the auto discovery feature kind of just connects to the port and tries to read the host name, which is really, really cool. We actually started this probably 5-6 years ago as a custom bash script, and then it kind of grew into this full blown feature, which again goes back to my example of, we're listening to customers, we're providing assistance, we're providing new features, and as the feature gets fully baked in, we get it, engineered and added to the product so all of our users can use it. So
yeah. And to kind of go back a little bit, you were talking about being the friendship of the, or being a friend of the network engineer. I will say one thing that stuck with me when we were talking to Open Gear, well, Dan specifically, behind closed doors, he was like, we want to be the friends, right? And that really stuck with me on it for like a sponsor, right? And so that was really cool.
yeah. We want to make sure that the network engineer's life are made easier. And I think that if the network engineers are happy, then we're happy. And that, again, it comes from sales, marketing, product management, engineering. And that's kind of the message of the company is we want to go where you're going. And we're here through the entire journey.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of value to anybody involved if it's just a sell and walk away mentality. I mean, it may sound corny, but building relationships is really important.
That's kind of where you get to learn where new features and new companies are going towards. And again, we have regular cadence call with a lot of our customers, especially our strategic accounts. We have at least biweekly, if not weekly, calls with them. Yeah. And the network engineers want that. It's not that we're imposing that. It has become a standard for us.
Yeah.
To want to be able to conversate with them, to want to be able to kind of show them our roadmap, make sure that everything that we're doing aligns with what they want to do.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of value to that, right? Like, because you can talk with people who have a solution, right? And but all they're trying to do is like sell you and upsell you and that kind of thing. But when you have someone where you're like, hey, like work with me on this, like how are you seeing other customers do this, or that kind of thing, and you actually have that conversation. It sounds like you guys are like helping with Ansible script or playbooks and that kind of thing too. So I see a lot of value in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to get my management on board real quick. I'm gonna call Dan.
I'm thinking about previous experiences at previous employers where we had issues with out of band. And I really, really wish we had Open Gear. Definitely had some issues with out of band's just not working and it never got fixed and we don't know what's going on. Oh, well, that kind of thing.
Without making us sign an NDA, what can you tell us about the future of Open Gear? What do you have, coming out?
There's a whole lot of new features coming out.
Dan's like,
no, we'll be announcing a new product line at Cisco Live.
Okay.
So just a couple months from now, assuming the episode comes out before that. Otherwise, this sentence is gonna sound a little weird. No, we're coming up with a new product line just to kind of make sure that the entirety of our use case is continuing to grow as we're refreshing a lot of our products. And we're making, both physical and software enhancements to the new product lines that are coming out. One thing that I'm excited about is we're kind of moving towards switching our console pinout to match kind of the industry standard. So that way, if you want to console into us, you can just use the industry standard console port or console cable that most data center techs have in hand and be able to connect to that.
Hang on, I'm out of banding my out of band.
Yeah.
My brain just exploded.
Yeah.
I can console into my...
I heard you liked out of band. So I put some out of band. You're out of band. You're out of band.
You can. It's actually pretty common to have kind of like a primary out of band connection for your data center, and then you have like a bunch below it. And one of our customers actually has that as a the terminology they use is out of band, but making sure that you have a secondary path to your out of band. So every out of band has to have either cellular active or a console port or its console port connected to a different out of band that has cellular active.
Yep. You should call that way out of band.
Yeah. WOOB. Yeah. I like that.
Copyright AJ Murray.
If we see that, I swear. So do you have like an SD-WAN solution for your out of band?
No. We actually work along with SD-WAN vendors, but we don't have any kind of like SD-WAN-ish solution ourselves. What we find out is SD-WAN is great for deployment and for cloud and kind of like centralizing everything, but it's still a point of failure, right? It still can go down. And the really cool thing is as we're developing our features, we, again, as I mentioned, we want to go beyond that console connection, right? We want to be there regardless of if you're connecting through an IP or through HTTPS. And we can still do those to this day, right? We have features on our centralized manager that gives you access to the GUI or CLI or SSH of your network equipment. But we don't have an SD-WAN solution ourselves.
I was kind of joking. We were talking about out of band, and for your out of band, I was like, do you have like an SD-WAN solution for it?
Just to get to your out of band?
Just to get to it. But I actually like that answer. So
every time you ask me something, I'm gonna like try and like find a solution for it.
That's your job.
We're generating new product.
Yeah. And funny story of the out of band I was actually right before us flying here, I was working with one of our customers, with Dan, and the remote tech that was working on site had very, very limited time. So they had 2 different Open Gears deployed, and they had them connected through the network cable, but the on-site tech only had enough time to console into one of the devices and configure it cellular. And then he's like, I gotta go. I don't have time for this. We'll pick this back up on Monday. So what ended up happening is the cellular device connected to our centralized manager, and it was up. And we ended up literally out-of-banding the out-of-band by changing the network traffic of our primary and secondary, connecting them together and forwarding the traffic from the secondary connection to the primary to the centralized manager. And we could hear the customer's voice on the other side, like realizing, wait a minute, like you can do all of this?
That's wild.
This is all possible?
That's really cool.
It turned a POC that would have taken, 3 extra days and having to wait until Monday or Tuesday to that same day. The customer had everything running, and they were like, oh, I'm going to go show this to the rest of my team, and I'll get back to you with their opinion on Monday. So
nice.
It was
It's the epitome of it sells itself.
Yeah.
I was telling Dan on the right here that that's the really cool thing about the product is we've kind of become familiar with it, so we don't see it as much, but it's seeing the customers having those aha moments without us really having to do a lot of work is a fantastic thing because I'm not necessarily a salesman, but the customer or the product kind of just does the work for me, right?
Nice.
I'm just there to kind of support.
With the centralized management being a big piece of the solution, what's kind of the ratio you see of how people deploy that on premises versus cloud?
It's about 50-50, I would say. It's the cloud is becoming a lot more bigger now, the deployment wise. Back then it was, I would say, about 80. Going back, our centralized manager used to be like a physical hardware, right? So we used to have like a physical server way back when. And then we kind of just virtualized everything, and customers could deploy it in their virtual box and vSphere, whatever, solution you would like. And then as cloud was growing and customers were asking about it, we kind of started that offering. But now cloud has kind of caught 50% of the market of our deployment being in the cloud. Yeah. And
so without naming names, I'm sure you hear a lot of stories about how your products have helped the customers. What's like the craziest thing you've heard a customer tell you about, how Open Gear saved their bacon?
Oh man, it's gonna be a lot of stories. I gotta give this one. I gotta give this one some thought. But the craziest one that I can think of right now was when we had so the same customer that I was talking about, where they have to have an out-of-band for their out-of-band, and they can't do maintenance without having an out-of-band. They actually were not inside a maintenance window, but they had a storm hit the entire data center and kind of shut the power down to half the stuff. So as soon as the storm got kind of passed and power came up 50% of the data center was just down. It couldn't get into anything. And luckily the Open Gear was still up because that wasn't affected and just the product rebooted. So they were able to, without having anybody on site, go and, reconfigure everything and access everything, bring everything up as needed without ever having to anybody on site. So that was the craziest one. 'Cause it was a physical storm that actually passed through. It didn't do any damage except cut the power. Yeah. And they were able to get in and get everything up and running.
Awesome. See, that's another use case I see for Open Gear that's not directly related to out-of-band management, because there are companies that can have distributed offices, locations all over the place. And those locations are susceptible to power issues. And if you have an Open Gear device that's connected via cellular, and you can log into your centralized management and see, okay, that device is down, it's probably a power issue. Or if that device is still up, then maybe I have a circuit issue. There's an issue with the hardware. I can get into the console and figure it out. So I kind of see it as kind of a canary sensor as well, as being able to see what the physical environment's like, whether it's up or down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the really cool thing is we have, smaller devices, 4 branch locations, bigger devices. One other feature, again, not to kind of try and solution around these things, but another popular feature for the branch sites are they actually utilize us as like the tertiary internet connection. So, not only you have an out-of-band solution that you can get in and fix things, but should your store, network connection go down, you can't run credit cards anymore, right? You don't want to be out of business until somebody comes in physically, 5 hours later and just reboots the switch. So the really handy thing is, that we have that offering as well as just built into the future. It's not like it doesn't cost you anything extra. You can actually enable it and you can utilize that cellular path. So
you can run a connection as a handoff to your network equipment there and tunnel traffic through it. Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. Okay.
Pass through feature, and you can still run your credit cards and, go to your Facebook and YouTube, whatever.
The important stuff,
exactly. And it builds a tunnel out to the cell tower so that you're PCI compliant and all that stuff, right?
It's secure, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's really cool is we actually kind of act as a DHCP server at that time, and we hand over the IP to the downstream router.
Wow.
And in that way, the router kind of is managing that IP address, and whether you want to build an IPsec tunnel to your MPLS sites or to your headquarters, or whether you want to take the cellular tower, it's all up to you. We're just kind of another hop in the path.
Wow.
So it's only out of band until you become in band.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
By any means necessary.
Yeah.
All right. Ramtin, any questions we should have asked you that we didn't ask you?
No, I think you guys covered it all. I'm pretty stoked to be here.
Yeah.
Asheville is beautiful.
Oh, man. We lucked out. It's a little chilly this weekend. It was like 70s before we got here. Today, it's hopefully going to get up into the 40s, maybe 50s. Yeah, but it's absolutely beautiful outside. We got this great Airbnb, not sponsored, sorry. And it's just, we're on the side of a mountain and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
See, I'm spoiled by this. It's going to be difficult to go back and do the virtual shows from now on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having such a blast with like being able to look at you people. It's so cool. Not you, Andy.
Oh.
I'm joking.
I just laid that up for you.
Yeah. Andy leans forward.
You guys got to do this annually.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
At
That's
least.
what we're hoping.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Excellent, Ramtin. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And I want to say a big thank you to Open Gear. You guys have been huge supporters of what we've been doing here on the podcast since the beginning. And of course, this Asheville event that we're here for would not be possible without the kind sponsorship of Open Gear and the support that you guys have made. And there's some really cool gifts that Open Gear got for us. I can't wait to show everybody. And when I say us, I mean everybody attending the event. I'm real sorry if you're listening to this and didn't make the event. But the generosity, the camaraderie, the teamwork, this has been such a fun experience. And, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramtin.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Art of Network Engineering podcast. Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.